r/AskReddit. Ex-racists of Reddit. What event or events changed you? Not me, but my 6th grade teacher had a brother who served in Vietnam. Apparently, he had a guy in their unit who was pretty openly racist. One day he gets hit in combat, and while the rest of his unit is staying in their bunker, the only black guy runs into an open fire and drags his ass to safety. If that doesn't fix you, I'd what would? My daddy said something similar about Vietnam. He said a black soldier might be dragging your ass to safety, while white soldiers run past you both. He was pretty enlightened for a white dude who grew up in 1950s Mississippi. I used to work for a guy who was extremely racist. One day I asked him why he was racist. He told me that while serving in Vietnam, someone in his platoon deserted, a black guy, and while they were out searching for him, a couple of guys got killed. I asked him if that was the only reason he was a racist, and he said it was. He based his hatred of an entire race on the actions of one scared soldier in Vietnam who happened to be black. I don't think deserting is good, and it's a really fucking dumb thing to do. It puts others in danger and yourself. But when you are some 19-year-old draftee from the I don't know fucking Idaho in Vietnam and told to go into the jungle and find Charlie, I would imagine a lot more people would run away and desert. I come from a family of racists. They spoke of other than whites races using ethnic slurs as common as commenting on the weather. When I was about 5, my older brother and I went into the local bakery to pick up an order for our mum, who was waiting in the car. A black boy was in front of us in line. This was something I hadn't often seen, and I said very loudly to my brother, "Look, it's an NR." My brother quickly shushed me, which made me very confused, but it was the crushed look on the boy's face that made me start to question my family's viewpoint. Over 40 years later, I have a very diverse friend group, but still, feel shame on how I made that boy feel those many years ago. That childish impulse pretty much helped you in the long run. Probably yes. I once called one of my African friends an R as well. Next second, another African friend comes from the side and face planted me. I've never said that word since. I actually had a bit of a moment, but I don't know if it counts. My father is an avid user of the N-word and in general, has some quite racist opinions, which I inherited. In 4th grade, I switched schools from a school with mostly white kids to one with people from everywhere. That's where I found some new friends with a big mixture of ethnicities. One day I go to a friend's house and he has some friends there and we play video games. At one point I look up and realized I'm the only white person in this room. Before I always thought of Poc as different. There I realized that I was the different one. Ergo, if we all can be the different one, we are all the same. I love it when people outthink racism at a young age. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and honestly becoming an ideological copy of your parents makes me feel like your critical thinking isn't great. Racism is learned. Egalitarianism is the default. Take away the racist legacies and structures, and society will progress to greater peace, understanding, wealth, both financial and relational. I started a construction job. Hispanics are some of the nicest, funniest people you'll ever meet. The language barrier even adds to the hilarity. It was an eye-opener that these guys are just trying to make a living and go home, just like me. Landing this job has changed my view on all races, and I'm very happy it did. You can't just hate someone for their distance from the equator. Edit, dope. I worked with a lot of Mexicans in a factory in my 20s. They taught us how to curse in Spanish and we taught them in English. It was fun trying to converse and a great feeling when we figured out what the other was saying. On Fridays, they'd bring in a spread of Mexican food and invite everyone to join them for lunch. I've never understood the hatred for them. I had a Mexican battle buddy in Army basic training. He burned his hand on an MR rewarmer one day and cursed in Spanish. To this day that memory makes me laugh. He was a great guy and a great soldier. What's up, Guillermo? Love you, buddy. Grew up in a town with no black people. Dad was very racist. So naturally, I grew up racist. Joined the military and was forced to hang out with a melting pot of races. Straightened me out. Basic is really good at doing that. It is. But sadly that doesn't change a lot of people. I've met a lot of people in the military that think racism is only about burning crosses and lynching. The more subtle aspects elude them and they say a lot of racist shit without thinking it's wrong. I'm glad this guy changed though. I think it's because so many people perceive racism as a binary thing. Either you are, or you aren't. And if it's binary, and you can point out someone or some group that's more racist than you can convince yourself that you aren't racist because you aren't one of them. Realism, racism and sexism and all of those are a spectrum is often an elusive concept for most people. It's on a spectrum, and that reason is why so many people get offended and defensive when you try to calm out their ignorance. In their mind, you're likening them to awful people who call people slurs and act maliciously. This is why when it comes to subtle things I usually refer to it as unconscious bias. People are a lot less put off by that term. I grew up as an Air Force brat, and at least on the bases we were at, racism was not tolerated. It was something I had seen in movies, but not real life. Also, for the most part, wherever we were was about 50% white 50% POC. Then my dad retired and we moved to one of the whitest states in the country. Like my high school of 1,000 kids had 3 black kids. And that was the first time I saw it. Friends of mine would just casually say the N-word or make jokes about racial stereotypes. Like WTF. You live in a 100% white area, where do you get these ideas? My nephew now goes to my old high school. He has complained about how racist his friends are. But it's actually getting worse. Now there are numerous trucks with the Confederate flag, this is New England, driving around town. 2 weeks ago a student and his mother parked their truck with a huge flag across the street from the high school. They did this as school was getting out, for all to see. Also from New England, and it's annoying when people fly that flag and say it's Southern pride, and I'm like, bro, we are in the North, get that treasonous fucking flag out of my face. Right? It makes no sense. I saw one Confederate flag for the first 20 years I lived here. But within the last 2 years, I see one every week. And it's not part of their heritage. They just do it to be smug fucks that want to let the world know they're racist and don't give a fuck about what the beaters think. There has been a very dark shift in our country. I made a throwaway for this one. A lot of people are saying they weren't really racist, but I was. I absolutely was. I grew up in an affluent area of Orange County, CA. My family had money, but not nearly enough as many of the kids at my school. I was an only child, got picked on, had pretty low self-esteem. My family was basically country club racists. Basically, they didn't actively drop N-bombs all over the place, but they had prejudices and didn't push back at all when I started saying racist things as a kid. I absolutely said the N-word with my friends, laughed about it, but was always too scared to do so publicly. When I got to high school, I was big into right-wing politics, wanting to join the army, and learning German. I wouldn't say I was a neo-Nazi. My best friend's brother was a neo-Nazi and I didn't hang out with any of his friends or want to go into that scene, but I often thought that I would have made a good Nazi had I been a German during the Third Reich. I definitely had friends in high school, but I wanted to go to college in a place that was more conservative and less diverse than I currently was. I figured my life would improve if I went to a place like that. So what changed? I did move to a small Midwest town and started taking German in college for real. I took history courses that kind of started to chip away at my view of the world. Studying abroad in Germany through my junior year is what really started to break the glass on my views. I thought that my German background and last name would win me some favors over there, but people didn't really give a shit at all. I saw that modern Germany was categorically and vastly different than the one I crafted in my head. I made friends from all over Europe and the world. I had some people I cared about really roast me for some nationalist and militaristic views I had. It made me really mad at the time, but eventually, I took their criticism seriously. I came back and finished doing some work in history classes and wrote a paper on Nazi propaganda. It was then that I really examined Nazi viewpoints through recent experience and saw how fucking dumb they were. I remember seeing a poster and the text said that the Jews were both behind communism and capitalism and just thought, this is just complete fucking nonsense and the people who believe this are morons. I actually did go into the military. I did ROTC in college and my time in ROTC and active duty pretty much flushed the rest out of me. Getting to know, working with, and leading people from different backgrounds and getting to see things through their eyes was an invaluable experience. So to summarize, meeting people from different backgrounds is probably the most important for me, and really actually having meaningful conversations, and not walking away when you're challenged. The thing is, I didn't just say you are right. Nationalism and being racist is wrong. I get it now. When I was in Germany, I fought back, I defended myself. I thought these people were just butthurt leftists and weren't going to take anything I said seriously anyway. But those conversations planted the seeds that grew over several months, and eventually, they made me recognize how wrong I was. The second was I always knew it was wrong to hate people, but I still did. I didn't have an online support structure to keep me in the mind frame. Had these online communities existed 10 years ago, I don't know if I could have broken out of this. Edit, let me just add, because people are seeing this. You often hear that hate is a poison. A huge part of being such a racist is being angry that so much of the world that doesn't conform to your narrow views of what a society should look like. You waste so much energy being so angry all the time. Every time you see a group of people in a place where you don't think they should be, or a couple of different ethnicities, or hearing different languages where you don't think you should be hearing them, you just react to this with anger. It's just so fucking poisonous. Once I started to let go of this a little bit, I tried to think about these feelings and wondered why I felt them. Why were all of these people making me so angry? And why did I think it would be so much better if I was somewhere else? The answer, of course, were problems in my own life, my own feelings of inadequacy, my feelings I squandered a privileged background and couldn't meet my parents' expectations. Once I started making those connections and take steps to improve the things in my own life I could control, I felt a lot better about myself and felt that I had a lot more to value in myself than being just a white guy from Newport. Hate really is poisonous. It poisons your self-image, your impression of others, your sense of empathy, your ability to humanize problems, your ability to connect with friends and family. But it doesn't have to be a death sentence. You can break out of the negatively reinforcing thought process. Start by reading stories of people who are totally different from you, watch movies made by people like this, just try and kickstart the apparatus in all of us to give a shit about people. I've had the opportunity to travel to so many places since my first time in Germany, and the thing I've learned above all else is people by and large want the same things: to live somewhere cool, hang out with their friends, provide for their families, etc. I'm sorry that it took me a while to learn this, but I do hope someone can see this and start have a gut check moment with themselves to think differently about how you think of others. Edit 2. Go figure. I have a Reddit account for 5 years and my first gold is on a throwaway where I confess to having been a bad human being. Thanks for the gesture, but please, give it to someone more deserving.